Alright, YouTube, Trump has moved on to stage 2 of his immigration-related executive orders and suggestions. And most of what I see here, although I've archived the link to CNN because they're alarmist and biased, and so naturally I don't want to give them any traffic on their actual URL. Despite the fear, apparently, of the media, oh, millions of people will be deported, it's such a terrible thing to actually have a border, to actually have an immigration policy at all. That's evil and racist and makes you a Nazi or something like that. I think it's pretty good overall. Apparently, it calls for, number one, they're ending catch and release, which I fully agree with. Catch and release, for those that don't necessarily know what that means, essentially it means someone's here illegally, they get caught, and they're here illegally. And they almost immediately let them go. They take down some info, let them go, and then they dig deeper to find out whether that person's an axe murderer or not. It's the most retarded policy we have ever implemented in the modern age. It's an abomination. It makes no sense. I can see, now I'll say this, tempering what I'm saying. It makes sense if someone has been checked out and they're not a criminal. They've been here legally for like half a decade. They've never done it. They never even stole a candy bar. Okay, go ahead and parole them. You've got better things to be doing with your time because there probably are a lot of like fucking murderers, rapists, drug dealers, and so forth in amongst the illegal groups that we see in this country. That should be your priority. Trump has prioritized that, and I can respect him for that too. Ending catch and release is a great idea, because it means we might finally actually catch those who are here illegally and who have committed crimes. Secondly, he's expediting deportation for those they're caught and they can't show that they've been here for at least 2 years. I guess the basic idea is if someone's already been here illegally for a number of years, they're learning the lingo, they're not breaking any laws or anything, they're on a much lower priority. In fact, I have a belief that Trump will grant them amnesty. And because he's a Republican, he'll actually get it through, unlike Obama, who tried to do so by executive order, got shot down by a Supreme Court that he'd already put several justices on, and none of them liked the idea. I thought that was the most hilarious thing ever. The left crowed about that. Oh, Obama's going to legalize these people. Ha, evil, bigoted Republicans praise Obama. And then the Supreme Court shoots it down, which I predicted like a month before it happened. And they were all upset. Oh, judicial activism, they screamed. Oh, the Supreme Court is being bad again. They love it. The Supreme Court makes a decision they generally like, and they hail it as the standard bearers of freedom and democracy. They make a decision that they don't like on a touchy issue, all of a sudden they're evildoers. The right does the same thing, though. Like, when they're pro-gun, when you get, like, McDonald versus Chicago stuff, the right wing is like, yeah, Supreme Court, our greatest friend. Then they make a decision like on gay marriage, and all of a sudden they start whining and complaining. It's just hypocrisy, and it's hyperbole, too. These people act like the sky is falling every time the Supreme Court makes a decision. No matter what decision they make, somebody's pissed off. The last time the Supreme Court made a truly dumb decision was with the ACA. On the ACA, labeling it a tax and allowing it to stand as constitutional was a total cop-out. They tried to take the middle ground. It was so dumb, and you could tell some of the people there, they didn't even, like, they were totally frustrated by the fact that it was happening. They're just, like, sitting there trying to wipe the sweat from their brow, trying to explain to people how, oh, we didn't really like it, but we had no other choice. We would have fucked up an entire system, and then Obama would be breathing down our necks, making our life miserable, essentially. But on the topic of expediting deportation, my own feeling is it should be more related to what they've done while here than how long they've been here. But I can understand the reasoning. The idea is to get rid of the most recent arrivals. Build your wall to prevent this problem from cropping up in the future, preferably. And then and only then can you begin to tackle the problem of millions of others who haven't really done anything wrong, because many of them fall into that category. You've got cases, like, for instance, on a pragmatic basis, if some woman comes here illegally, has several children, is with, you know, a U.S. citizen who's grown fond of them, who's with them, should the government, if they're all lawful, should the government deprive that American citizen of their romantic relationship and potentially their kids through deportation, assuming that nobody's broken any other laws? I think that's a touchy issue. And I think it's one that too often gets overlooked by people. They're gung-ho for deportation and border walls and all of these things, but they're not necessarily thinking pragmatically. Now, Trump's new proposal would put some 2 million people out of the country through deportation. And that's a perfectly reasonable number compared to the number of people who are here illegally. That would probably be roughly akin to the number who have actually committed crimes while here. The other part, and I'm more ambivalent on this, like it's either or, is extending reason for deportation to non-violent offenses. Maybe petty larceny. I don't know exactly what the classification will be. Like simple assault, petty larceny. Are we talking about like property crime, or are we just talking about, less than felonious physical assault? What exactly are we talking about here? And what about like state laws? What if someone's illegal in Colorado smoking pot and they get caught like with pot somewhere else, but they're from Colorado, but illegally, and they've done nothing else? What if they have a wife and kids or something, or a husband and kids? It gets very complicated. I think personally that an expedited tribunal should be set up, because they're not citizens, so they're not guaranteed a right to trial, by the way. Sad as though that may sound to members of the left and some libertarians. These libertarians that think, oh, they have constitutional rights. No, they don't. They're not citizens of the United States. They're here illegally. They don't have constitutional rights. They have human rights. I would extend to them anyway some constitutional rights. I think they should be able to represent themselves. I think that there should be a trial system set up. But for that many people that would be going through the system to set up a civilian-style trial system would be impossible with any scope of decency. It'd be impossible to do. Set up some sort of informal tribunal. What we should do is this. If they're found to have committed a significant crime, deport them. If they've been here for a short time, they don't have a significant other or any other exonerating factors, deport them. Put them back in, they're not a criminal, so, let them reapply. I wouldn't block them from that if they want to come in legally. Number 3, though, and here's the big thing. We do need to streamline our actual immigration system. Now, some people think that this all means Mexico. Now, I'm talking about other countries, too. In fact, as a tip of the hat to those who would feel uncomfortable with such a thing, actually increasing the flow of legal immigrants to take strain off of those who might want to immigrate illegally. Why don't we simply allot certain priorities to people coming from closely allied nations like the UK or France or something like that? Wouldn't that be a perfectly acceptable counterbalance? I would think that it would be. And to those who will inevitably claim, I'll probably get 2 or 3 social justice warriors complaining, oh, this makes you a racist. You're talking about deporting people who they've only done a little bit of wrong or something like that. I have sympathy for these people, but it has nothing to do with race. There are people in Mexico that are completely white. You'd never be able to tell the difference between them and a Norwegian on the street until they actually started speaking in a Mexican accent. They sounded like they were from Monterey or Mexico City or something instead of Stockholm. I am well aware of this fact. It's not racial. It has nothing to do with nationality either. We're talking about people who are here. They have not gone through the proper channels. They're not documented. If you're going to have any sort of cultural stability, you have to have documentation of those that are coming into the country. Now, as for give them biometric IDs and tracking devices and breathe down their necks, you don't need to do that. You need a simple background check and a medical check, too. The bigger concern is medical. I tell you, what's going to keep me up at night isn't worrying about whether these people are in ISIS, because, ISIS isn't exactly particularly prevalent in Mexico, let's face it, or Honduras. That doesn't worry me. What worries me is not a spike in petty larceny or cartels. What worries me is some superbug coming over the border because we have no medical checking going on for millions and millions of people. We end up getting a massive epidemic of resistant tuberculosis that's mutated somehow and now affects well-fed, not malnourished individuals and kills a few tens of millions of people. Then people maybe will start getting serious about giving medical checks at the border. If nothing else, that's what above all else we need. For the medical infrastructure alone, we've got diseases now coming back into this country that were virtually eradicated because of our weak border situation. That and the fucking anti-vaxxers. Now, I'm not going to sit here and scream at adults to be forced to be vaccinated. But get your fucking kids vaccinated. Are you that stupid? I mean, come on. Yeah, a conspiracy was dreamed up hundreds of years ago to kill the world's population. Look at how weak and horrible things are in this part of the world. Everyone's riddled with disease. Yeah, they're dying of tuberculosis and everything else. No, they've been vaccinated. They're protected against many diseases. But that herd immunity is starting to go the way of the dinosaur. That's probably the biggest concern we should have as a nation right now. Even above and beyond things like nuclear war or something like that, or a new Cold War, or the collapse of the world's markets. No, we should probably be worried right now about an epidemic above all else. We're in dire straits if that happens. You know how many people die? If it explodes across, like Mexico or something, or China or something, and it comes here and explodes across this continent, it hits everyone. Be like the Spanish flu. There are people in Iceland getting the Spanish flu. Remote as it was, cut off from most of the world's trade as it was, they still got infected. Do you think it's going to be any different with the next big epidemic? It'll probably kill 1 billion people. It wouldn't even need that high a death rate to kill 1 billion people. And once order begins to break down in some of these pockets of the world, and famine sets in, secondary disease comes and kills a whole nother wave of people. You get cholera, or you get an outbreak of the measles, or something like that. It'd be terrible. So yeah, strengthening the border is probably a good idea, if only for the medical applications that are involved. I realize, of course, disease would spread potentially anyway, but we'd have a shot at it. We could at least say we were trying to keep disease out of the country. Mexico doesn't exactly have a first world medical infrastructure. What part of this do the social justice warriors not get? That's what you should be concerned about. You're some friggin' trust fund baby who thinks, oh yeah, I got my yearly cold yesterday. It was pretty bad. I had a scratchy throat and was sneezing a little bit. Now, what happens if you get like resistant TB or something like that? Oh, you're going to be in dire straits. You're going to be all sorts of fucked up. You'll never have been so sick in your life, probably. Wonderful for you. You invited it into the country. I don't sit here and ridicule foreigners or ethnic minorities or anything like that. I have no reason to. I have perfect respect for their culture and their right to exist too. So does ours. And disease is probably the one that would end up ending it. Probably more than overthrow by some foreign group of people that never assimilated, because that would still be a tiny minority compared with the native population. It won't be because of ISIS or Al-Qaeda or any of that stuff. In time, it will be due to a nuclear war, but before that, we could get double fucked by an epidemic quite easily. That's what people should be concerned about. So I generally support Trump's proposals here. I think they're fine. Catch and release is the big one, though. Ending that alone will take care of a lot of this problem and allow us to sweep aside the issue. That and building a border wall. Because we no longer have... If you do just those two things, even if it doesn't solve the problem of like whatever it is, 10 million, 15 million people here already illegally, even if it doesn't do anything about those that are already here and you still have to plow through them, it significantly slows down or stops the flow of new illegal immigrants into the country. That's the point. That's the one thing that was missing in the past. Whenever somebody brought up this issue, they never shut off the supply of new illegals. They gave other people a reason to come here illegally, specifically by giving amnesty to people without creating a better border defense. You can do that. You can grant amnesty to some millions of people, and it won't create a future problem if and only if the border is secure and properly staffed by people who are allowed to do their job. If you do that, it's not a problem. If you do that and you don't build the wall, if you don't end catch and release, you are screwed for another generation. It becomes a problem again. It causes more social alienation down the line, more economic problems, and more political havoc. So people have to keep talking about it over and over, decade after decade. And that's what past administrations have done. They kicked the can down the road long enough. It's time to solve the problem. The only way I see of that is what Trump is proposing here plus the wall will basically solve the entire problem. And then it's off the table forever. We don't have that problem anymore. People aren't coming in illegally. If they are, they're trickling in. They're not pouring in like they have been for the last decade or so. So I think generally, at least two parts of this proposal are not just positive, but very important to pass. So I think this is a hit for Trump. If the courts, of course, don't end up fucking around the Ninth Circuit or whatever. They probably will try. I don't think they'll prevail upon appeal, though. That's about all. Peace out.